Right, let's make a start. Just to say again, I'm Mike Wright. I'm the Director of Communications and Membership at Bond. Delighted to be just introducing this webinar with one of our closest and most long-standing collaborators, StoneX. We've been working with StoneX for more than a decade, probably, in various guises, and so delighted to be working with them again on this kind of very pertinent topic of transferring funds to the Middle East. It's a sort of very tricky situation in terms of how to transfer funds. The situation changes regularly, and we want to make sure that we give you the best advice we can possibly. And StoneX are our sort of trusted partner in this work, so we're delighted to be working with them today. Just a few, before I pass on to Jean-Claude and Joanna from StoneX, just a few housekeeping things. If you have any questions, and we're delighted to take any questions, big or small, you can be very specific about particular currencies or particular questions about getting funds in, but please do ask them. Use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll endeavour to answer them at some point during the presentation. Presentation will be recorded, so no need to make notes. We'll send these. It'll be available on the website afterwards, as will slides. So no need to make notes as you go along. So you'll get that after the session. And then finally, we'll be sending out a form. There'll be a form made available via a link at the end of the session. Towards the end of the session, we'd love your feedback. We'd love your ideas on other questions specifically in this area. We'd love to hear a bit more about what more you want, what you've found valuable in this session, and what more you'd like us to do in this space. But yeah, delighted to be here this morning. Glad to see so many people here, and I'm going to transfer. I'm going to transfer to Joanna in the first instance. Is that correct? Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mike, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. And as Mike mentioned, I know this is a hot topic at the moment, so we really hope that we can help you with answering any questions you might have about the countries that you send payments to. I'll just give you a brief overview of kind of just StoneX payments. So we're a cross-border payments provider specializing in payments all over the world, and of course the Middle East, which is why we're here today. We've been doing this for over 35 years. We can send funds in 140 currencies to over 180 countries worldwide. So we really know what we're talking about. We really hope that we can help you answer any questions today. I've been with the company for about 14 years now, and I'm responsible for the sales efforts for the UK and Switzerland. So clients ranging from UN agencies to IDOs are all clients that I look after. So please do ask any questions you have throughout the webinar. We would be more than happy to help you. Jean-Claude, I don't know if you just want to give a quick introduction of yourself as well, and then we can move on to the next slide.
Hi, good morning, everyone. So Jean-Claude, I've been with StoneX for 14 years now. I have two roles with StoneX. One is that I'm a colleague of Joanna, or it's the same team of Joanna, from the sales perspective, where I look after mainly in the Scandinavian region. My other role is that I also do correspondent banking, which is my main remit for being part of this webinar, where I look after the relationships we have mainly in Francophone West Africa and some of the Gulf and the Middle East region. Today, I'm actually joining you from Riyadh, where I came here to speak locally with the banks we work with here to enable payments in the region. A pleasure to virtually meet you all.
Great, thank you very much, Jean-Claude. So the first slide, we thought it would be a good idea to kind of show you kind of the good and bad reasons of sending maybe hard currency instead of local currency. So if you look at this slide, we've used Iraq as an example because we have a lot of questions from clients that say, we really struggle to get funds to Iraq quickly, cost effectively. And we ask these clients, what is the reason for this? Are you sending sterling? Are you sending dollars? Are you sending local currency? Do you have relationship to the local banks? And a lot of the time they respond with they are sending GBP or USD. So if you see here on the left-hand side, you can see if you do send sterling or dollars or euros or a hard currency, there's multiple banks in the payment chain. So, for example, if you're sending dollars, the dollars would have to be routed through the US before they actually get credited locally in Iraq. And if you're just using that method, they will get credited through any local bank in Iraq, and they will charge you whatever fee they want. So it's not cost effective. You lose control of your funds as well. And of course, we understand, that it's very important to get these funds to these projects on time, to ensure that the great work that you carry out is being done efficiently. So there's multiple banks in the payment chain. The average transaction size continues to decrease. And what this means is if you're sending dollars, pounds, or sterlings, as I mentioned, once it does actually get to Iraq or get to the local bank in the Middle East, whichever country that you're working in, they will take fees. And these fees can be significant. And they could really make a difference to how much your beneficiary is actually getting credited and how much your projects are actually going to be receive to do these ongoing projects. And if you look at the right-hand side, it's if by sending the local currency. So for example, with StoneX, we have local banks in Iraq that we use to process these payments. We've built relationships with these banks. We speak to them on a daily basis. We are able to obtain very competitive pricing because we speak directly to the local bank. There is no intermediary. And that's when you can really guarantee the full principal amount. So that the exact amount of local currency will be credited to your beneficiary in 2 working days if you send the local currency via a local bank. And then there's no delays in the settlements to the beneficiary, and you have the transparency of the FX. In the next slide, Jean-Claude will explain exactly how the payment starts from start to finish.
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, I think what you have see there is our processes, which Joanna actually kind of really touched on in terms of how we process payments, or maybe what you perhaps should be looking for when you're looking for a partner to process payments, in another jurisdictions. And here you can see really that there are no intermediary bank chains, and I think that there are different lines you see. I think some of it actually is more between our own internal processes, but you can see by looking at the circles there are less parties involved in terms of processing the payments. And really, I think what you're looking for, if you're looking for a partner to make such payments, is really, I think the questions a number of questions you can ask really is really, how are they processing payments locally? Are they waiting for your funds, for example, before processing the payment locally? How can they guarantee that the payment will be processed, in local currency, and is that done in the full amount? And what kind of certainty can they provide? So really, I think that's what we have. Our infrastructure kind of has simplified that, and perhaps maybe one thing to add as well, which you would have seen also in a previous slide, is and since we're talking about the Middle East, is also the compliance hurdles. Because when you put in a certain country, from the Middle East, first, as Joanna said, if you're making sterling payments, probably at some point, it's because most banks here don't hold in this part of the world, especially in the Levant region and Iraq. Most of them, they rarely hold GBP accounts. So most probably, if your funding currency is sterling, it's at some point in time it'll actually be converted in dollars, and so there is already conversion there, maybe which you are not aware of. And also, it's coming through an intermediary bank chain where, whether it's a sterling bank or a dollar bank, they're actually looking at the payments, and they need to also do their compliance checks. And in some cases, when they see certain countries, immediately erase the flag. Again, I think that also sometimes delays the payment, especially for aid and development organizations like yourselves. And I think, and also for we're talking about taking Iraq as an example. I mean, following I think for the past 20, 30 years, there aren't that many banks actually that hold direct dollar account with a bank in the United States. I would imagine actually that most of the banks with which your partners, local partners or beneficiaries hold accounts with, probably hold a dollar account somewhere could be in Turkey, for example, or in Jordan. It's much better than it was last time, because there were even times that even to make a payment to Iraq, sometimes it needed to go through a bank in China, and then to Jordan, and then to Iraq. But still, I think you still have it is still the case where if you're making a hard currency payment like dollar sterling, it's probably not going straight there. It's going via at least two countries before the fund reaches that destination. So when you're looking for a partner, really is to ask, what kind of partners do they actually have local partners, direct local partners, to which such payments can be made, and they provide full transparency of the whole workflow of how that payment is being processed. So this is an example of how StoneX does it. And happy to answer any detailed question. I think over to the next slide, please. Yeah, I think really this really summarizes what Joanna and I have just mentioned in terms of the difficulties or the risks associated with sending with sending local currency, or associated with sending dollars, euros, or dollars, as opposed to sending local currency. I think especially when you have, I'm sure from your perspective, also being able to, from an audit perspective, knowing exactly, what to be able to follow up on the use of the funds that are being sent locally. Sending local currency gives you that level of transparency. And I think through by sending local currency, I think with the right partners, there are a significant amount of risk that can be mitigated. Ranging from of course there's a compliance risk, risk of fraud, but also really making sure that from a cost-effective perspective, I think there are significant advantages to sending local currency as opposed to dollar, euros, or dollars. Or sterling.
Jean-Claude, I'm just going to give you this question from Niv Hall. Thank you for this. We have many partners in Palestine, both in the West Bank and in Gaza. What would your advice be to transfer the funds as quickly and cheaply as possible?
Thank you. Yes, I think that specific country, I think is particular. West Bank and Gaza. We previously, we were. I think it was allowed to send Israeli shekel there, but for the past few years, that has kind of become limited. So right now, actually, we are, because of the let's say the situation. It is, we can only send dollars or euros to the West Bank or Gaza. So that we can do. So we can only send euros or dollars there, because that's the only currency that is allowed, that are allowed there. I think there, I guess what you're looking for as a partner really is one, a partner that is from a payments perspective, is a partner that understands that has worked in the sector for some time, meaning servicing the aid and development organizations that are active in those areas or regions of the world, countries in the world, and understand the business, your operations. And of course, I think from our side, of course, we would also require maybe it might be that there is some post-monitoring transactions that is required, or some upfront information. But I think the fact that we process already such transactions because we understand the operations of what you're doing and the work you're achieving. So there are no so we can send. The only restrictions we have is that we can only send euros or dollars, no local currency, of course. And then of course what you're looking for as well is really a competitive exchange rate. Of course, euro dollars. I think we are quite competitive on there as well, and what we can guarantee in terms of settlement. So yeah, I think I would speak to 1, 2, or 3 partners. Compare exchange rates, but also on the service level. Have they done this before? Are they doing it? Can they even, if you want certain comforts, can they provide you maybe with a reference of an organization that's currently doing it through them, which I think we can do. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, JC. I think if we move on to the next slide, I think we should hopefully be able to pass it over to Muna. Yes. So these are our contact details if you do have any questions that we aren't able to answer here, or if you do just want to reach out, please feel free to contact us. And as Mike mentioned, you will receive these presentations and this is recorded. Muna, over to you.
Hello, good morning, and nice to be here with you. As you can see, my name is Muna Abbas. I'm the CEO of Asfari Foundation. And the foundation is a charity registered in the UK. It's a grant-making foundation, philanthropy foundation. And our focus regionally is in the Middle East, particularly the Levant, the 4 countries in the Levant, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, and Jordan. So these are the countries where we transfer money to. And we mainly support civil society organizations in these countries. We've been established since 2006 till now, and our core area of work is to strengthen the civil society and investing in the infrastructure of civil society. I also, in another capacity, I sit on the board of trustees of MAP UK as well, so it's very much relevant to this topic as well. And thank you for organizing this session to talk about this very important topic and timely. I just want to start by, when talking about transferring money and funds to the Middle East, whether it's in a humanitarian context or in more stable context, we need to acknowledge, particularly in a humanitarian context, that what is many times framed as financial risk is often a political decision. The question is not whether funds exist, but whether there is a political will to let them reach civilians and people in need. So it is a political matter, whether it's sanctions, whether it's anti-terrorism. Using these terms very broadly sometimes end up with manipulating funds and it is more it's a political let's say decision rather than purely technical and financial issue. However, we can still address and find ways where we can navigate that. From our experience, these restrictions, whether particularly in Palestine, Gaza, particularly the last couple of years, and in the Syrian context, anti-terrorism and sanctions were playing really significant barrier to transferring money to local partners, CSOs in these countries. That's why many donors, we can see that they prefer to work with international NGOs because they're more reliable for their donors. They can navigate the systems. They have the power to transfer money, and they have a stronger compliance process. Which is also brings out another level of issue, which is working only with big international NGOs, UN agencies, and undermining the role of local civil society and local CSOs. Also, that from in the sector, this propose another complexity, which is like bringing the agenda of international NGOs and imposing certain agendas and priorities on the local civil society, and the whole aid sector and the whole development process is not led by local civil society and grassroots organizations. There are a number of issues we are facing as an organization, and I think many organizations are facing when they are trying to transfer or send funds to the region, is the banking restrictions. The compliance, the bureaucracy of it is very complicated. It puts a lot of obstacles, especially as explained in your presentation, the couple of slides here. There are intermediate banks. They all want to check all through the way. So we're asked so many questions. We need to show our due diligence. We need to show sometimes the agreements, the recipients, and so many details. And that leads to a lot of delays in transferring money, and in cases where it is very timely. I remember during the earthquake in Syria, for example, we couldn't transfer money easily to the affected areas and to those who are responding to the earthquake in northwest areas in Syria because of the sanctions. So it's the sanctions, the political situation, and then the over-compliance of the banks because of the fear, because of they want to avoid any kind of risks there. The other I think is because we're registered here in the UK, and I think many donors who are registered in countries in the global north, we need to abide by the local regulations, like with the Charity Commission here. There are also very let's say the tight restrictions and due diligence and compliance when it comes to transferring money to charities or organizations in these countries, and it becomes really like hindering sending aids to affected populations when timely and when it's needed. Going back to the banks, for example, when you transfer money through banks, intermediate banks or your direct banks, just mentioning the word Syria was in the last 10 years can block the transfer, and can lead to like very rigorous investigation of where is it going to, what are the agreements, what are the compliance, and I can tell you in many cases we couldn't just transfer the money, and it led to break the agreement with the partner because they couldn't receive the money. Going to alternative solutions might be very expensive. The cost is high. Some organizations, they find other ways like Hawala or other platforms for money transfer, and that makes it even more expensive. All this like all donors in the global international NGOs and grant-making organizations, they prefer to work with a safe partner, like big international NGOs and UN agencies, as I said, and then a lot of money will go for paying for overhead costs, and very little will reach to affected population. That will also cause to kind of a mistrust between the local civil society and the donors as well, because there is a huge space between you and a distance between you as a funder and the recipients of the fund, and eventually the affected population that we are trying to support. This is in the case of the humanitarian situation, but in countries like Jordan, for example, which is stable, the government is in control. Also, transferring money is not easy because, and I can tell you, like from experience, that when we transfer money, it has to go through the central bank, and the central bank can block the fund if the recipients, if the local organization do not, if they don't show an approval from the government to receive that fund. And that cycle of getting approvals from the government can take up to months to receive the money, and sometimes they can be rejected, and it happened. One time, in one case, it took us like almost 10 months for a local small civil society organization to receive, I don't know, £15,000. It took them 10 months to receive to get the government approval to receive the funding. So we transferred the money. It was blocked in the central bank. It didn't even reach their local bank. So that's also an element to take into consideration, and that it can. I don't know if receiving these money or that fund through a different pathway can put these organizations in conflict with the government, or they might breach the law in these countries. But we have to abide by this protocol the government designed. So in both cases, whether it's humanitarian, with the sanctions and the restrictions and the anti-terrorism, and using these terms very broadly to block all aid and getting through, not only money, even goods, even supplies cannot get inside. Like we have the example of Gaza right now, and in stable contexts, it's also complicated. It's where the government is very much in control. I think in Egypt it's similar. I'm not an expert in what's going on in Egypt, but there are a lot of restrictions in there, even I think harsher than Jordan. So we need to find solutions. I think we can start with the advocacy to address the political side of it, working with governments, banks, and to put some pressure on governments and banks to have more flexible regulations and understanding of the sanctions. Of course, we need to be compliant. We need to have our due diligence, but at the same time, we need to address the fact that the civilians cannot pay the price of being in a certain location under the authority of certain powers in their geographical areas, and they need to receive aid with dignity, making sure that they're safe, they have access to food, water, cash, and yeah, all what address their needs. The other thing is to build a pool funding where and this is actually happening. There are examples where number of donors are pulling funds together and trust one of them or a trusted organization that can channel the fund smoothly to the affected areas and to targeted populations through civil society organizations, making sure that it is distributed fairly and abiding by the humanitarian principles. Yeah, I can think. I mean, there are a number of solutions like we're hearing today. This is a fantastic example of how we can transfer money to these countries, but it is important to understand the political context, how to navigate that, and I would again emphasize that this is a political problem. We can solve number of technicalities of it, but the political parts of it is, I think, the more influential. Recently, the sanctions were lifted on Syria, but the banks are not transferring money. They're very reluctant. So even if it's solved on a political level, it has to be translated to the banks. So the effect of the political decisions and the restrictions and the sanctions can stay even beyond the left of the sanctions. So that effect can go for a very long time. So it's yeah, it is a complex situation that we need to address at multiple levels. One of them is the technicalities of it and the logistics of it, and how do we navigate the system of transferring money. But it's important that we have the role of organizations who are keen to deliver the aid and the funding to the affected areas, that we make sure that people receive this aid timely and in the most dignified way. Yeah, I will stop here now. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Muna. That's fantastic. A really good overview of the situation, both from a kind of practical perspective, but also the kind of wider political and regulatory ramifications as well. Jean-Claude, did you want to come in?
Yes. I think, thank you very much for Muna. I think very valid interventions. I think what I would say as well, I think from StoneX perspective or any party, I think we would definitely, there are issues we cannot resolve, especially when it comes to on the political side. I think the good thing is, especially maybe from a sanctions and regulatory perspective, because of our, having been in this sector for almost 40 years, I think we do become involved, with I think now with the new government in the US, but we are also involved with the UK government, previously, of course, with the US government in trying to set up a framework to manage these sanctions and to enable aid reaching those that need it. What I would say is perhaps from I think Jordan, you mentioned, one of the countries you mentioned was Jordan. I think what to look for, I think how I think knowing how, maybe to an extent, how sometimes it works there, how the banks work there. Because when a payment is made as well, I think you need all types of information in that payment, so it kind of streamlines the process. And when an organization is sending dollars or sterling, through the way bank communicates right now, it's kind of restricted in terms of the information that is needed. And when it needs to go through multiple intermediaries, that information sometimes, of course, gets truncated. And which once it reaches a country like Jordan, maybe the bank there or the central bank is actually left maybe with one line of description of the payment, where it's coming from, what the purpose is for, and sometimes maybe they see could be one part of a name, and suddenly, their system would probably maybe just block the payment. So I think when you're looking for a partner as well, or any organization is looking for a partner, really is, what kind of information, or how do they ensure that the information that is put on, legitimate information that is put on in the payment instruction is actually passed on throughout the whole chain, to really streamline the process without needing them to having to come back to ask, further questions, further documentation. And it's also because really, that information gets truncated when it goes through multiple intermediaries. So when you're looking for a partner, if they can tell you, can you ensure that all the correct information is passed on, the purpose of payment? Do you even know actually? Can they tell you prior to even making the payment whether they will be whether you will be facing an issue because of their local presence or the local network? So I think there are from a payments perspective, I think it's also finding the right partner. But of course, there are other discussions or levels of discussions that, from a political level, that's I think for us, we can't really resolve. But I think there are other challenges, especially from a payments transfer perspective, that we have been able to resolve over the years.
Thanks, Jean-Claude. I was just going to pick up some of we answered, had a flurry of questions and answered those quite rapidly. So I just wanted to go back to one or two things. And I'm just remembering a few years ago, blockchain was going to be the answer to all our ills about sort of transferring funds. And I just wondered, Muna, particularly from your perspective, have you come across that as a method by which might be a solution to some of these challenges, or is it not materializing in the way that? I mean, a decade ago, I do remember that being, the cure-all for money transfer. Do you have any experience of that or knowledge of where we are with that?
Definitely, not even. I used to work with international NGOs before, and money transfers used to be blocked for, as I mentioned, for just mentioning the name of the country or where it's going to, and there was no way to solve it other than just to play with the words and not to mention Syria in the descriptions or in any supporting documents that we're providing. And it starts sometimes, some organizations, even when they share their proposals or the agreements, they try to just make it as vague as possible, just not to show that it is Syria. Even if the money were transferred to work with Syrian refugees in Jordan, the fact of mentioning the word Syria and Syrian can block the payment. It's even if the money is coming from an EU country or with using EU, for example. We used to have an EU account, and still it can face some serious delays and blockage. One of the solutions we found that we work with organizations who have bank accounts abroad, and donors can transfer to those bank accounts in any country in the global north. And then it's the responsibility of the foundation or the implementing organization to transfer the money into the affected areas. And it was a practice, and we all know in the sector, like bags of cash used to be transferred, moving from one border to another, because that's a reality. So we claim that we put all these, or the system put all these restrictions for the sake of transparency, but the end result is to using the most untransparent ways of just moving money from one place to another. So it's not even an effective system. It's encouraging less compliant, less transparent. Yeah, and again, that can open the door of all sorts of money to go and cash to go from one border to another without really like a clear system of tracking that money. And there were so many cases that international organizations faced in fraud and misuse of money and money ending up with in the hands of the wrong
reputation
groups.
risk. So,
there is a reputation risk, and we all know that there were cases, public cases, talking about it. So having all these restrictions is not helping being compliant and being transparent and being due to. Yep.
Thank you. And then Joanna and Jean-Claude, you sort of Joanna, you sort of hinted earlier on that you're talking about well, obviously the banks are working in Syria, and you said hopefully we'll be able to. What can you just talk about? What are the factors that will change that situation? What do you? I mean, it's an impossible question to answer, I know, but what's going to be the things that sort of the things that change that allow funds to be transferred to Syria or to other countries like Yemen where it's difficult, you can only work in local currency. What changes are, and it's not down to StoneX, but what are the sort of things that need to change in order to funds to flow again?
JC, do you want to take that one for Syria?
Yes. So I think for us, I mean, we used to actually be able to process payments to Syria until 2014, and then I think following the political situation there, I think that capability we no longer had that capability because of the sanctions, etc. It's true. I think what you said following the rapid events of December last year. We, of course, since then we've been speaking to some of the banks that work there, and it's true. Even though I think some of them were waiting, of course, for the mainly the U.S. sanctions to be lifted. The EU was the first one, and the U.S. did the same during the summer. And now, I think what they're doing is really, as you said, they're looking, what they would mean from a legal perspective to be able to process payments. So I think it's from my perspective, it is slow, but I think unfortunately from StoneX perspective, I think we need to wait until one where we're comfortable with a local partner that is able to that we can trust, that we can work with, and also that can provide the service that we want for our clients. I think for NGOs, as you say, full transparency, audit, and of course that the payments reach the destination. So I think until then, unfortunately, from StoneX perspective, it is restricted. But I think it could be that there are probably maybe other banks that are making it possible. I know, for example, it's more expensive, but I'm sure you have the UN agencies that are able to do that right now. But of course, it's not. I think they have different leverage. They have their own way of operating such restrictions. But yeah, from StoneX perspective, we're hoping to make it possible sooner rather than later. As for Yemen, yeah, we can do local currency. I mean, it's quite restricted there to maybe to a number of banks, and we can also right now starting to see more of a separation between north and south in terms of how the funds are delivered there, because you have different regulatory systems. But yeah, we can process payments in Yemen Riyal because ultimately it's still the main currency that is used in Yemen. I mean, I think to receive cash dollars there, which I'm sorry, it's in circulation, but it's not to the level you would see, for example, in Lebanon. I would say, but yeah, so we can't make payments to Yemen in Yemen Riyal, but not for the time being, not in dollars or euros, and simply because we don't know. We want to be able to give our clients full control of the payment. And if you're making a dollar-euro payment, in most cases, really, you're relying on another party in the chain to process that payment. And there is a risk there. I think there are risks that can be tolerated with maybe certain countries, but I think there are other countries perhaps where the risk might be a bit too high for us and our clients. But these are situations we follow up on a regular basis. I myself, I think I'm in touch with banks in the region quite regularly. And if there's any changes that we can implement or any service delivery that we can bring in, I think we always inform our clients to make it possible. So a long answer to your question.
Thanks, all good. Muna, do you want to come in on?
Yeah, just to follow up on more questions on Syria. So the sanctions politically, they're lifted. There is a SWIFT created for the banks in Syria. The central bank technically can receive money, but still the banks that most organizations are working with are reluctant, and they want guarantees even, not to transfer money to Syria, or even to make sure they want us to have to give guarantees that even it will not end up in Syria by any means. So even if we transfer funds to a partner in Germany or in Turkey, we need to make sure that this money will not end up in Syria. Till now, I'm talking about a month ago. So how would we navigate that? Do you foresee that changes, or because you will end up working with banks by the end of the day, right?
Yes. I mean, that's how we work. StoneX, we work with local banks, and what I would say that the banks we're speaking with, they're very open to the conversation. So meaning that I think it's moving ahead slowly, but it is moving ahead. I think we'll probably now that the summer period is over, hopefully we'll see some movement there. So no, we can. Our modus operandi is to work locally with the local bank and to make transfers locally. And I mean, for the time being, what we do is really we actually make payments to the neighboring countries, knowing that the payments are going to Syria. So we actually do it on behalf of clients that have projects for Syria-related Syria-related projects. So we're doing it, but not to Syria directly. But yes, I think to come to your question, I think the currency that we will enable hopefully will be the local currency. And yes, it will be hopefully, I think, with a little or hopefully with little restrictions, but it will be to process payments within Syria, hopefully to all the banks if they're not listed under a sanction.
Thank you. I've got a question here about smooth delivery to Iraq. How do you ensure that? Who wants to take that question?
I could take that.
Okay, Joanna.
Yeah, so we again with as Jean mentioned, we use local banks in the country. So in Iraq as well, we do use local banks on the ground. Send the local currency to ensure smooth delivery. Make sure you get the price up front, and then we from a StoneX point of view monitor the transfer from start to finish, and guarantee the funds to be delivered to the beneficiary within 2 working days. So that's how we do it. Of course, we can't speak for other providers or banks. I'm not sure how they process their payments there. But we always encourage customers, just in general, to send the local currency to the country. If you want to make sure that it's transparent, you want to get the most out of your money, do your best to send the local currency to that country. Don't send dollars and pounds and euros. Try and get the local currency there. Make sure you know who you're using. If your providers are saying we're sending local currency there, just how are they doing it? Are they using an intermediary, or are they just sending? Have they have relationships with local banks on the ground? So I think it's just doing your due diligence on providers that you use. and just making sure they actually understand the countries that they're operating in. Because especially with the Middle East, and as we're all aware, it can be tricky. So you need to make sure that you are working with someone that can promise and do their best to ensure they know what they're doing, they know how to transfer the funds there, and they're potentially working with local banks on the ground. Jean-Claude, I don't know if I missed anything or if you'd like to add to that.
No. I think with with Iraq, we have local banks we work with there. One, we're able to access so local and competitive exchange rates, and in terms of smooth payments, so we're using the local clearing systems to process the payment. Meaning, yes, we can guarantee value dates. We can guarantee that the full amount is processed to your partner. I think wherever they are, whichever bank they hold was in Iraq. I don't think there are any restrictions there. Yeah, so as Joanna said, I think sometimes it's just good to compare providers. What can they tell you in terms of how they are what is their workflow an operational workflow. But yeah, Iraq is I think it's a straightforward country for us, and yeah, we do see more and more organizations wanting to send funds there, and especially following the local regulation or the requirement by the central bank for the main currency to be used there to be actually the Iraqi dinar instead of dollars, for example. So we see more and more organizations wanting to send the Iraqi dinar there.
Quite an interesting question from Zaina, and then I'll come to Denise's question, which is also very interesting. Zaina's asking, are there restrictions on amounts to Iraq and Lebanon?
No restrictions. What I would say with regards to no, first of all, no restrictions. And Lebanon, we can send both the Lebanese pound, and I think because of the situation there as well, we also send sometimes dollars because of the economic situation. I think what I would say here is that we're also very transparent in terms of telling the client actually what is the best currency to use in a specific country. I mean, I wouldn't. There are countries where I wouldn't tell clients to send local currency because either it would not make sense for them to do that. I think Lebanon, yes, we can send both currencies, and there are no restrictions in terms of the amount.
Okay. Thank you. And I've got a question from Denise about maybe Muna, you want to kind of take a view on this. How do you get around the donors or country offices insisting on receiving hard currency?
Yeah, it's we usually transfer through bank systems. And it's 3 currencies: dollar, sterling pound, or euros. That's the way. We don't transfer in local currencies. And simply, like, we haven't tried transferring money into Syria yet. We support diaspora Syrian organizations or those who have registrations outside Syria. But we're still observing how we can transfer money to inside Syria. In the other countries, for example, in Palestine, banks in the West Bank, they're operating. There are banks that are reliable. We transfer money to them. Yeah, it faces some delays, some challenges, asking for questions, but eventually it goes through. We never pay cash, like ever. And that's something that we need to abide by, and because we're also regulated by the Charity Commission here in the UK, and we need to be careful not to put ourselves under any risk. Definitely, and the cash is dangerous, and it comes with a whole chain of services around it, like you need security, you need guarantees. It's really complicated, and we don't do that. And, even if it takes that, we don't work with these partners.
Right. Thank you. Wissam's just made a very kind offer. He says, are you in touch with the central bank or other banks in Syria? If useful, happy to help facilitating that connection. So,
Okay. Not yet, actually,
no.
not directly with the central bank. We're following up on what's going on there. But I think our main problem is the banks in the UK and in Europe. The transferring money into Syria is an issue with these banks, especially if it goes through intermediate banks and all that. And we haven't reached to the point that we discuss the topic with the Syrian banks. It's the international banks who are over compliant when it comes to transferring money to Syria.
I think Joanna.
Yes, and I think for us, we are speaking to local banks. Jean-Claude has had to leave. I'm very sorry. He's running to another meeting, so he's apologised. But we are speaking to the local banks. The central bank, I will need to double check on that. But it's going to have to go through the central bank regardless. The local banks have to operate under the central bank's rules and procedures. So that is certainly something we could potentially speak to you about. I'm not sure who sent that question, but thank you, and we can certainly be in touch. That would be great.
Thanks, Joanna. So I think we've reached the end point here. Just in a way, I just want to sort of reflect on the fact that there's a whole host of questions about a whole host of countries, and we've just captured sort of only the surface of the questions that people could ask. So by all means, do follow up with us, and we'll work with Joanna and Jean-Claude, and thanks to Muna for in terms of answering your questions. Great to have Muna here to give us a sort of perspective on the big challenges and the big picture problems that are kind of endemic to regulation and compliance, and the obstacles that those represent in terms of getting in funds. But I'd just like to by all means get in touch with myself at Bond or any of us. You'll get the slides, the contact details are there. I'd just like to say thank you to Muna and Joanna and Jean-Claude for today. Really appreciate it, and look forward to our next event together. And thank you for everyone for their questions, loads of questions, and look forward to seeing you at our next event. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks, Muna. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Bye.